I'm Mike Winger, and I'm here with my guest, Dr. Tim Stratton. And I just want to ask you, Tim, explain for our audience, say like the 17-year-old who has no philosophical education, what are you saying? Like, what's your argument for God? How does this thing work? Help us to just, before we go deep, to understand just on the surface, what is your point?
Well, let's just start out by talking about naturalism. Naturalism is the view that only nature exists. So if that's the case, there's no God, there's no angels or demons, there's no abstract objects, and there's definitely not a human soul, an immaterial aspect of human existence. Right? Only, if naturalism is true, only the stuff that scientists could test or possibly discover is what actually exists. But if nature is all that exists, then that means that everything about humanity, everything about you, would be caused and determined by the forces and past events of nature, like physics and chemistry, for example. But if physics and chemistry are running the entire show, then that means that physics and chemistry cause and determine everything about you. But if that's the case, then that means that physics and chemistry always causes and determines exactly what you think of and about and exactly how you think of and about it. But if that's the case, then if the forces of nature cause and determine you to hold a false belief, then it would be impossible for you to reach a better belief, let alone the truth. But here's the deal. You can reach true beliefs. You can do it. I mean, does anybody really want to say that they can't reach true beliefs? I mean, that would mean that you reached the true belief that you cannot reach true beliefs. And that's just crazy talk.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, here's what we can conclude. Since you can reach better and true beliefs, right? You're not forced to hold false beliefs. Then it follows that not all of your beliefs are caused and determined by the forces and past events of nature, or really anything else for that matter. And that means that you really are a free thinker. You're a free thinker. So that means that you have free will, namely free will in the libertarian sense. And I'll explain that more later. But that means that you seem to be more than just nature. That is to say that there seems to be something supernatural, as it were, about humanity, something other than nature about you. And I contend the best explanation for this free thinking and supernatural ability is God, and more specifically, the biblical view of God. So that's a quick flyover of some of the stuff I'll unpack more as we go on today.
Right on. So in short, please feel free throughout this whole interview, correct me if you feel like I'm misrepresenting or I've got something wrong. I'm no ego there, just make your case. But here's my takeaway here so far is what you're saying is humans, we have the ability to think freely and to make rational choices. Like, I think this is true, I think this is false, and we're actually deciding between those things. And that itself is evidence for God. The best explanation for that is God. And we'll explain why as we go along. And that sounds cliche almost, but there's a thoughtful philosophical case you're going to make. But you're also adding, and if you argue against this, you have to like assume that it's true kind of to argue against it. Because if you think you're making rational choices, then it's okay to argue that you're making rational choices, but you're going to argue that you're not, which is a rational argument for something that you think you can't rationally conclude. At any rate,
yeah, you did
something
good.
Like that. All right, so let me introduce you guys to my guest. This is Dr. Tim Stratton. Me and him actually met at the EPS conference. Or ETS conference, it's the same thing, but we met there last year, Evangelical Philosophical Society conference, which was, I found out when I went, I was a noob, right? It was my first time, that it's actually, apparently people go more to hang out than they do to attend the sessions, which is kind of sad and also enjoyable.
That's right. That's right.
It's kind of the untold truth about the ETS conference. But I was there with the sessions, and I remember I saw Tim Barnett, and he was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna do this one and that one and that one." And he goes, "You noob." I learned anyway. But me and Tim hit it off. We became quickly at least friends. If maybe I don't know if we don't talk to each other that much, but I think we have a friend status we find in
Definitely.
each other in
Yep.
real life, not just Facebook.
That's
At
right.
any rate, tell us though, Tim, I know you. Tell the audience who you are, like what gives what you're about to share some credibility, the work you've put into this.
Well, I was in youth ministry. I was a pastor for years, and I started being challenged by students in my youth group in high school ministry and in college ministry. Uh, you know, uh, Students who were really struggling with their faith, other students who were becoming atheists in my youth group, and they were challenging me with some really tough questions, and I didn't know how to answer any of them. And so it kind of shook my faith quite a bit, actually. But I started, I made a commitment saying I'm going to follow truth wherever it leads. I'm going to go look for evidence. And if atheism turns out to be true, I'm going to be the most committed atheist you've ever seen. And if it's Islam, I'll be a Muslim. If Buddhism is true, count me in. And if Christianity turns out to be true, then I'm going to be more on fire for Christ than I've ever been in my life. And so I went on a journey, and one of the things that just kept me up at night was this topic about free will. And at the time, I was a diehard cage stage Calvinist, and I didn't believe that we had free will. But I started having dialogues with atheists who were calling themselves free thinkers, and they were also saying there's no such thing as free will. But then it hit me that they're denying free will, yet calling themselves free thinkers. And I started thinking about my own beliefs also as a Calvinistic determinist, and started saying, man, I need to look into this more. Well, needless to say, I'm convinced that we can demonstrate that humans do possess libertarian free will, at least sometimes. Obviously not, that doesn't mean I have free will regarding everything. But I make a case that exhaustive determinism is not true, and that occasionally we possess libertarian freedom. So I'm not a deterministic Calvinist anymore, not a Calvinist at all anymore. I'm a Molinist, but I definitely don't think that the atheistic worldview, at least the naturalistic worldview, can make sense of the term free thinker. So that's kind of what sparked some of this. I did a master's degree at Biola University, laser focusing on this topic, and then I did my doctoral work, doing much work on this topic, as well as some other things as well, and just finished that up last year.
Sure.
So,
And then for those who, like me, didn't, kind of spend a lot of our times in these academic institutions, like I want the audience to know what this means is that Tim has actually focused on this issue, and that means that he's tried to figure out how to refine a philosophical argument for God from free will, which involves defending that we have free will. We're going to do that today. And it also involves explaining why the whole idea of free will is incompatible with naturalism, or that sort of godless view of the world. And so this is something he's going to defend. And he's tried to find challenges to this argument. He's tried to find things that would rebut the argument. He's changed the argument to try to make sure it was more refined and more thoughtful, and more bulletproof. And so basically, the reason why I want you here for this is because whatever, objection may arise, you've kind of already thought through that path, at least as far as all the objections, you've kind of worked through them all, and you have what you believe is a good answer and response. So he's going to break down this argument for us, give it to us thoughtfully. And one thing I'll mention, almost spilled my coffee. That would be terrible. I'd just be afraid I'd fry my computer right now. At any rate, one thing I want to mention, though, is when you were a youth pastor, which I may have a little experience at that myself, 13 years. Actually, I was in youth ministry for a lot longer than that, but I was as a pastor for 13 years. Anyway, the thing that I appreciate about you is that you came to a point where you said, I don't know the answers to these questions. And sometimes I think Christian leaders, we feel like we're supposed to be the answer man for everything. And so we don't allow ourselves to be ignorant for a time on an issue. It doesn't mean we're wrong about God. It just means I don't know the answer to this issue. I'm going to go ahead and try to find it. But instead, pastors, there's this pressure, at least in my experience, to have a quick, in-your-pocket answer for anything someone says. Answer it within 2 minutes or less, and then move on. And that can actually cause us to have insufficient answers because we haven't given ourselves permission to think something through. So anyway, I commend you for that. All right, so Tim, tell us about the argument from free will. Walk us through it all, and then if you guys want more details, we'll tell you later on about Tim's book that's coming out pretty soon. Do you know when the time is on that?
I don't know the date yet, but Whippenstock is publishing it. It's called Human Freedom, Divine Knowledge, and Mere Molinism. And they've got the final edits. I'm waiting on the book cover art and the release date. So it should be soon.
Cool. So, I mean, you know, when you're watching this video, it may already be out. If it is, I'll put a link in the description down below for when it is. And we're not, I mean, this is all just about creating resources for you guys. So we're going to give you as much data and info as possible right now. So let's go ahead and get started. Cool. Take us away. We're going to have a long video today, and we're going to get deep into this argument, the philosophical argument from free will, well, from us to free will and from free will to God. I'll put it that way. Yeah. All right. So what do you want to share, Tim?
Yeah, well, like I said, it really came down to what it means to be a free thinker and what it takes to be a free thinker. You know, back in the day when I was first exploring where the evidence leads, and I was talking to atheists all the time, I wanted to know if atheism was true, you know, but I realized that atheists like to label themselves as free thinkers. But you know, it soon hit me that if one thinks about it, at least if they're free to do so, that it seemed that if atheists happen to be right, that God does not exist, then it would be at least highly implausible that there was some kind of an immaterial or supernatural aspect of humanity. You know, Christians often refer to this as a soul. We're not the only ones that think we have a soul. But if somebody doesn't like the word soul, just think of it as an immaterial or supernatural aspect of humanity or of the human existence.
Sure, yeah.
But this led me to the conclusion eventually that it seems impossible for the atheistic naturalist to really be a free thinker, even though they like the label. I say, sure, they can join the club and call themselves free thinkers, but if they happen to be right about atheistic naturalism, then no one can freely think anything, including them. So if God doesn't exist, you know, it's hard to see how anyone could ever freely think about good evidence and arguments and choose to deliberate and think rationally, you know, to evaluate and to weigh and to judge, to reach the most logical conclusions or the inference to the best explanation.
So Tim, let me ask, does that mean, and I'm going to represent some people in the audience, I think here, does that mean that you're saying atheists are dumb and that they're stupid? Is that what you're saying? They're not free thinkers because you think that atheists are dumb?
No, not at all. I just think they're wrong on this issue. But like I mentioned, there's many Christians who think this way too. So just as I'm going to point out problems with a naturalist who might believe some of these things, I can tweak the same argument and go after my brothers in Christ who think the same things for different reasons.
Determinism, yeah. So you're really saying on determinism, whether it's physical determinism or divine, whatever determinism you have, that's where you say, okay, well now you can't be a free thinker because that worldview is not consistent with the conclusion that you're a free thinker. That would be a different argument than saying, it's kind of like when I say to the atheist, you know, you don't have objective moral values and duties on your worldview. It never means you're a bad person.
No,
that's a whole different issue. Like, it's just unrelated.
Yeah. I mean, some of the people that I disagree with on both sides of the theistic aisle. I mean, I can say, I can look at these people and say, wow, you guys are brilliant, such great thinkers, but you're just making a little mistake right here. And I'm sure that I make mistakes. I'm not infallible, but I've worked really hard over, you know, I'd say since I've spent the last 8 years laser focusing on this topic. And I could be wrong, but I think we'll see as we flesh out the argument that, man, there's a really good case here that humans are not always causally determined.
Yeah. All right. I'm excited to do it. Can we get into the argument?
Yeah. Okay. So this is really an argument. I first crafted it while I was at Biola University. It was either 2011 or 2012, right in that area. And I've been thinking, I think I'd been thinking about it probably since 2010 or 2011, but I think I first put pen to paper and got these premises down in 2012. And it came after I was dwelling upon what it means to freely think in a libertarian sense. So I need to define that. So before I share the argument, let me explain what I mean by libertarian free will or libertarian freedom. When I use the word libertarian, I'm not talking about politics. A lot of people think I'm going straight into politics, and I care about politics. And in fact, sometimes I think these metaphysical views do and should be applied to politics because metaphysics is a study of ultimate reality, and we should want our politics to correspond to reality. But I'm not talking about politics today. I'm focused on what it means to have libertarian freedom in a philosophical sense. So there's two definitions of libertarian freedom that are typically referenced in academia. One is, I'll just call it a person who has an ability to do otherwise possesses libertarian freedom. So it's that ability to do otherwise that people focus on. That's, the technical term for that is the principle of alternative possibilities. That's abbreviated quite often as the PAP or the PAP. But that just refers to one's ability to do otherwise.
So that's like again, if I'm like an ice cream shop and they're asking what flavor do I want, and I say chocolate, I really could have said vanilla. Like I had the ability to say vanilla and I said chocolate.
That's right.
Okay.
You really could have chosen other than chocolate. And there's so many different kinds of thought experiments that we could do, but ice cream is always a good one to start with.
That's just where I go right away.
Yeah, that's right. Excuse me. All right, the second one, that's the ability to do otherwise version of libertarian freedom. The second definition simply refers to a person who is simply uncaused or not causally determined. If you are not causally determined at any point in your life, then at that point in your life, you possess libertarian freedom. And that's referred to as sourcehood freedom, sourcehood libertarian freedom. That means you are the source of a specific thought or action. And so if you're the source, even if you can't do otherwise for some weird, strange, or odd reason, if you're the source and nothing else is causally determining you, then you've still got libertarian freedom. So, for example, if I can demonstrate that a person at least sometimes possesses the ability to think or act otherwise, well, then I've demonstrated that this person possesses libertarian freedom. But with that said, suppose that I can't prove that. I can't prove the ability to do otherwise, but I can prove or demonstrate that there's no causal strings attached to a person. Well, if I've done that much, then I've shown that this person is still free in the libertarian sense. So with that said, I typically spend a lot of time defending a specific definition of libertarian freedom that seems to entail both versions of libertarianism. And I simply say that libertarian freedom is the ability to choose between or among a range of alternative options, each of which is compatible with one's nature at a given moment. So I'll say that one more time. Libertarian freedom is the ability to choose between or among a range of alternative options, each of which is compatible with one's nature at a given moment. And, there's some people who say, well, we've still got free will, but not libertarian freedom. We've got compatibilistic freedom. And that just simply means that they think that there's only one thing compatible with your nature at a given moment. And I say, well, why think a thing like that? Why can't we have a range of alternative options, each of which is compatible with our nature at a given moment? And I argue that we do in my book. But
so the description you give sounds like it's consistent with the PAP version, right? Where I could like the principle of alternative possibilities, and that's the version you defend, right?
I defend both of them.
I guess both, because one is included in the other.
That's right. I just simply say, look, there's sometimes when all that's needed is sourcehood.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's ever a time where I can't demonstrate the PAP,
Mm-hmm.
if I can still demonstrate sourcehood, I still win. I still get libertarian freedom.
Mm-hmm.
But I give arguments for both in my book. I argue both for sourcehood and at other times, at least at some times, you've got to have the principle of alternative possibilities.
Now let me throw something out here. I think that and maybe I'm wrong, but I think that the average person does think we have free will. I think it's a very commonsensical thing. I think it's just super obvious to us. And I realize that when you step into the realm of philosophy, there's things that are very obvious and probably very true that are sometimes also hard to prove. And and then I think a lot of normal people are just like, yeah, I have free will. I make choices all the time. My personal experience, and yeah, that does matter, of me making choices every day proves to me that I have free will. I'm reacting and deciding, and and so I think in that sense you have an easy case to make for free will for most people.
Right, yeah.
But then for other people you have this massive mountain to climb because they're going to really fight you on it. Would you think that that's a good or correct or accurate view of things?
I do believe that you're exactly right. It's intuitive to us. I'd say it's intuitively obvious that we're not being causally determined by something or someone else when you choose Coke or Pepsi. You have this sense that, yeah, I'm going to choose Coke today, but I could have chosen Pepsi. So I remember the first time when somebody told me that I don't have free will. This was another Christian, by the way, an exhaustive divine determinist. And he sat down and I was like, wait, you're telling me that when I'm at the fast food restaurant, I go up to get a drink and I'm looking at all these different options and I can, hold my cup underneath each of them. You're saying that I don't have the ability, that I can only choose one thing? And he goes, yep, that's exactly right. And I'm like, no way. I resisted it. But he kept then trying to tell me from a biblical standpoint how we don't have it. Now, I think he's dead wrong. But at that time, he convinced me. But it took a lot of work on his part. And, that's when I became
fight against all that intuition that you had that says, but I make choices all the time.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. And so this doesn't mean we make everything we do as a decision. It just means that we are making choices.
Yeah.
And so we could actually spend the whole 2 hours talking about proving free will. And I do know you have an argument for that. And should I put that on the screen for people to look at, or am I cutting off stuff that you wanted to share?
Yeah, first I should probably just say before we get to that libertarianism, or this libertarian free will, it's rejected by most of the world's leading naturalists and atheists. Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Daniel Dennett, Alex Rosenberg, Jerry Coyne, Sean Carroll, Dan Barker, who my friend, colleague, and boss Braxton Hunter just debated on this topic, on this very topic on free will.
Yep.
And of course, he really did. The late Stephen Hawking also rejected libertarian freedom. So the list of these naturalists could go on and on and on. And not to mention, Mike, I saw your Twitter feed yesterday, and I saw all these atheists and naturalists commenting on, you tweeted about this conversation we were going to have. And so I skimmed down and I looked at so many of the comments, and I'm like, well, they're all affirming that, at least the vast majority of them were affirming that, we're, of course we don't have free will. Yeah. And some of them were saying there's no way we could, have libertarian freedom and things like that. And so I'm going to push back on that and show why I think they're wrong. So again, I did explain at the beginning what a naturalist was, but again, a naturalist is one who simply affirms the proposition that all that exists is nature, and then it follows from that God,
and by nature, I mean, anyway, by nature, people know what we mean, right? We're talking about the physical universe and the forces that are active in it, right?
Yeah. I like to say it this way: all that could be tested or possibly discovered through science. That's what they believe is all that exists.
Right.
And so these folks usually say that science is the only way to know, which is got problems to make a statement like that. That ultimately is will shoot itself in the foot because you can't know that in the through science. But
that's right. Scientism is self-refuting. It is.
That's right. That's right. But so if one starts with the assumption that nature is all that exists, then that rules out God from the beginning, because God, by definition, is other than nature because he was the creator of all nature, if he exists, right? So then if all that exists is nature, then God's just ruled out. And so these naturalists are atheists. And I want people to see that it's not a conclusion, it's an assumption or a presupposition they start with, that nature is all that exists and therefore God doesn't exist. So, but just to be clear, all naturalists are atheists, but although the majority of atheists seem to be naturalists, one could be an atheist and still think that some immaterial or supernatural realities exist. They're very rare, few and far between, but they could exist.
And my takeaway on that is that it seems to me that the naturalists are saying there's no free will because they're naturalists, or because of their assumptions and their prior beliefs about no God and just scientifically testable things in the universe. And and so that really it's not as though they don't believe in free will and that made them naturalists. Right. This is rather their worldview is affecting their opinion on free will, which is overcoming their natural intuition that free will is a real thing.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Which I actually talked about this last week in a video I did on atheism, and how all these arguments for atheism. There was this article, this really poor article on what, top atheists and their best arguments against God, and I did a whole video on it. And basically, the majority of the arguments were assuming atheism to prove atheism. And here, if your argument against free will is naturalism's true, therefore free will, but that can become a circular thing if you don't have an actual case for naturalism in addition to it. So yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So, since it's possible to be an atheist but not a naturalist, since all naturalists are atheists, typically throughout the rest of this talk, if I say the word atheism, I'm meaning a naturalist. But anyway, so let's focus on these naturalistic atheists that permeate society today. These folks say that free will, in a libertarian sense, is nothing but an illusion. Now, I will say this: I've met a couple or maybe a small handful who disagree. And I think they're right to disagree, but I'll discuss that later. Sure. But let's start with something that Stephen Hawking wrote. He said, quote, "It's hard to imagine how free will can operate if our behavior is determined by physical law. So it seems that we are no more than biological machines and that free will is just an illusion. Human behavior is indeed determined by the laws of nature, and our actions are as determined as the order or the orbits of the planets." So that's Hawking's quote right there. Our actions are as determined as the orbits of the planets. So that got my attention when I first read that. Then I read Sam Harris's book called Free Will, and so Sam Harris, he's looked at as a new atheist philosopher and neuroscientist, and he's a best-selling author. And I got to say, I really, I like Sam Harris. He might be my favorite atheist. I think he's been doing some really good work, just talking about the culture today, and all the violence and riots that are in the streets right now. And I think he said some good things about that. But when it comes to free will, and obviously I disagree with his atheism, I think he makes some big mistakes. And in fact, I'd say that his book was probably the main catalyst for my doctoral dissertation. So I kind of owe Sam Harris here. But let's look at what Sam Harris says in his book entitled Free Will. He concludes that we don't have it. He says, quote, "Free will is an illusion. Our wills are simply not of our own making. thoughts and intentions emerge from background causes of which we are unaware and over which we exert no conscious control. We do not have the freedom we think we have. Either our wills, not to mention our thoughts and beliefs, are determined by prior causes and we are not responsible for them, or they are the product of chance and we are not responsible for them, end quote. I threw in that part about not to mention our thoughts and beliefs because he does say, let me go back to what he says at the beginning. He says, thoughts and intentions emerge from background causes of which we are unaware and over which we exert no conscious control. So everything you think, right, and intentionality refers to an ofness or aboutness. So everything you think of and about and exactly how you think of and about it, well, according to Sam Harris here, he says they emerge from background causes of which we are unaware and over which we exert no conscious control. So
that's huge.
Again, yeah, it's huge, and I think it's going to destroy the case for naturalism. So we'll unpack that, but it seems that a majority of atheists and naturalists agree that things external to humanity govern and control everything about humanity. So according to them, this determining, as Harris made clear, includes the thoughts, wills, and intentions of humanity. Now I got to say, I think he's right that if naturalism is true, that's what would follow. Mm-hmm. But Harris and company are saying that something other than humanity, other than you, causes and determines all the thoughts and beliefs in your head right now, all the thoughts and beliefs you've ever had up to this point, and all the thoughts and beliefs you're going to have in the future. None of it is up to you. It's all up to other stuff. So here's the rub. If your thoughts and intentions are always caused and determined by external factors, then something other than you always causally determines exactly what you think of and about and exactly how you think of and about it. And that's so important. Let me say that again. If all thoughts and intentions are caused and determined by external factors, then something other than the self, the thing you refer to as I, right? Something other than you always causally determines exactly what you think of and about and exactly how you think of and about it. And that, when I say how you think of and about it, that's huge because now that gets into how you evaluate things or judge things or weigh things or how you deliberate on a matter. It's not up to you. It's up to something else.
Yeah. So like, in other words, let's say that I read a book and in reading the book, I change my mind on an issue. On Sam Harris's explanation, I had no choice. Like, I was going to change my mind when I read those combinations of letters. It would trigger different synapses and certain firings, just like a ball rolling down a hill. It has no choice about where it ends. And all of my thoughts, all of the things that I believe are predetermined in a sense based on my chemistry. And then certain inputs go in and it causes certain reactions. And I'm more like, I'm not the guy driving the car of my opinions. I'm a passenger, and it's just nature and nurture that are driving the car, and I'm just kind of so I'm not actually having opinions that I form. I'm experiencing opinions that are being formed without my control.
Yeah, you're a passive observer. I like to say all you're left to on this view is a mere bag of beliefs, none of which are up to the bag.
Yeah.
So so again, these naturalists, the majority of atheists, they proclaim that freedom or simply free will, or, again, in a libertarian sense, is an illusion. So, this raises a couple big questions. Do we actually have this kind of free will, this libertarian freedom? And if so, how would we know? How could we know? Is it something we can know? And so as I see it, of all the arguments that have been developed in support of libertarian freedom, and I've offered several of them in my book. I've crafted several of them. Again, my book is called Human Freedom, Divine Knowledge, and Mere Molinism. It'll be out soon. But of all the arguments that have been developed in support of libertarian freedom, there seems to be one that I think rules them all. And that reason stems from the very ability to reason. And in fact, I've argued that human beliefs can be rationally affirmed or argued only if humans possess libertarian freedom. So this gets us into that argument called the free thinking argument. And so, yeah, it's only two premises and a conclusion. So it's pretty simple. This is the first one
I'll put it up on the screen here.
Okay. So I think this is the one I first wrote this out in my classroom at Biola in 2012 and called it the free thinking argument. It goes like this. Premise one, if humans, well, I should say I didn't word it just like this. I've tweaked the wording over the years. So in my master's thesis, the wording was different. And I realized there was some weakness there in how it was worded. So now I've changed the wording. You mentioned that I've changed it as I've gone on.
Yeah.
But so premise one, if humans do not possess libertarian freedom, then humans do not possess the ability to rationally infer and rationally affirm knowledge claims. Premise two, humans do possess the ability to rationally infer and rationally affirm knowledge claims. Right, who's going to disagree with that one? So conclusion, therefore, humans possess libertarian freedom. So this short syllogism is eye-opening because it deductively concludes something that's been debated. It's been debated for centuries. So if this argument stands, and I believe it does, I mean, really, I think it's one of the most powerful metaphysical arguments I've ever seen. But I guess I might be biased. I might be causally determined to think that. But I think we'll unpack it and people will see why I think that.
Yeah.
But again, if this argument stands, and I think it does, then this centuries-long debate is finally over. So I'm kind of excited about that.
Okay, so and just for those who aren't familiar with like a syllogism type argument, this isn't the defense of the argument. This is just the argument, right? So it's like if 1 and 2 are true and 3 follows from 1, then his case has been made. And so it's like, you know, taking the concepts and smashing them out there, breaking them down, whittling them down until it's like, this is all I really need to prove my point.
I don't think you can argue against it. Mm-hmm. And if I'm right about that, then I said, you know, this debate that's been raging for centuries is finally over. At least sometimes we've got libertarian free will. Not everything is causally determined, or so we can say exhaustive determinism is false. But I wasn't content with just demonstrating that humans possess libertarian freedom, which was pretty cool by itself. But I got this feeling that there was more available to uncover, and I think it was right. So I simply added two additional premises, which then gave us 2 additional deductive conclusions and 1 abductive conclusion that's pretty powerful and attention-getting. So this argument isn't just the free thinking argument. This now is the free thinking argument against naturalism. So I'll share that. You want to put that up on the screen too?
There it is.
There you go. All right. So premise 1.
All right. And let me just say, you guys, I think this is a great argument, and I think that we should listen to it thoughtfully and pay attention to it. So please take the time. And actually, I know my audience, a lot of the people watching, they're excited to hear these thoughtful, you know, here's an argument. I know this is a long video, but I wanted it to be long because I want to hear it all. And so anyway, go for it, Tim.
Yeah, I don't know if you're going to get it all, but you're going to get a lot of it today.
Yeah.
If you want it all, you got to buy the book. So sorry, another plug, had to do it. All right, so the first premise goes like this. If naturalism is true, human nature does not include an immaterial soul. Premise 2, if human nature does not include an immaterial soul, then humans do not possess libertarian freedom. 3, if humans do not possess libertarian freedom, then humans do not possess the ability to rationally infer and rationally affirm knowledge claims. So that was the first premise of the last argument. Now it's number 3, and so this is what I call the core of the argument. So then premise 4 is humans do possess the ability to rationally infer and rationally affirm knowledge claims. So now we've got some deductive conclusions here. So 5 says, therefore, humans possess libertarian freedom. 6, therefore, human nature includes an immaterial soul. And 7, therefore, naturalism is false. And then 8, the best explanation of human libertarian freedom and the soul is the biblical view of God. Now, that's an abductive conclusion, and an abductive conclusion doesn't follow deductively. Otherwise, it'd be a deductive conclusion. But so abductive conclusions are not as strong or as forceful as deductive conclusions. But what it does is it simply shows the best explanation of all the data. It's really the beginning of a new argument that one can add to the deductive conclusions from the free-thinking argument against naturalism. But it's based on the deductive conclusions of the argument. So with that said, and for the moment, I think it'd be cool to just focus on steps 1 through 7. And then if we have time, we can unpack the abductive conclusion.
All right.
Is that cool?
Sounds great. Yeah.
All right. So the first thing I want to point out is that this is a structurally valid deductive syllogism through step 7. So that means it's set up correctly. But is it a sound argument? That means, in addition to its structure being correct, are the premises true?
Yeah.
Or at least more likely true than false? Really, that's all you need for a good argument, is premises that seem to be more likely true than false.
Right.
So the first 3 steps of the argument are rather straightforward. So in summary, premise 1 is synonymous with, if naturalism is true, nature is all that exists. Now that's true by definition, if you remember. So the first premise is simply synonymous with, if naturalism is true, nature is all that exists. I don't get much pushback with that premise. Premise two is tantamount to the following. If all that exists is nature, then everything about humanity is causally determined by forces and events outside of human control. Right? These things would include, for example, the forces of nature, the initial conditions of the Big Bang, perhaps some quantum mechanics or quantum events. Now, very few atheists will disagree with that. In fact, most atheists affirm it. So if you recall, that's exactly what Sam Harris was arguing for. And that's what his colleagues make, and not to mention all the atheists on your Twitter feed yesterday, or at least the vast majority of them, right?
Yeah, they naturally see that their atheism is not consistent with libertarian freedom.
Right. Yeah. So I'm simply taking what these atheists are saying. I'm believing them here. I'm simply taking what they say is the case, and I make it a premise of my argument. So I really don't need to defend much time defending this premise, because atheists typically defend it for me, and they write entire books defending this premise. So with that said, let's move to the next premise, because this one, premise 3, is usually the first to be attacked. And I think that's a horrible mistake. And there's some other atheist philosophers who realize this mistake. I do quote them in my book. Now, I should say, atheist scientists usually will affirm this premise more quickly than the atheist philosopher, because some of these atheist philosophers are like, oh, wait a second, I don't know if we can affirm this premise, but many of them still do. Even, I should say many of these atheist philosophers affirm it anyway, or I should say attack this premise. So premise 3, usually the first to be attacked, it communicates the following, that if something outside of human control causally determines you to affirm a false belief, then it would be impossible for you to infer or affirm a better or true belief. Think about that.
So I only have one option for what I believe. And that belief, that option that I'm going to end up holding is caused by something other than me making a decision or me evaluating evidence. It's just caused by like a ball rolling down a hill type of events.
Right. And when you feel like you are evaluating, well, guess what? You're not doing it. Something else is causally determining how you evaluate it. So even when you
Dominoes are
stop,
falling.
What's that?
Dominoes are falling as I think I'm
Well, yeah,
evaluating.
I mean, determinists hate that analogy, but it really is pretty good when you think about it. But if something outside of human control causes and determines you to affirm a false belief, then it would be impossible for you to infer or affirm a better or true belief. And that just seems indisputable. I mean, think about it. If all things are outside of human control, then that includes exactly what every human always thinks of and about, and exactly how each human always thinks of and about it. So, I mean, that's to say, if all things are causally determined by something other than humanity, then that includes all the thoughts and beliefs held by humanity. And if a person's thoughts and beliefs, if they're forced upon him and he could not have chosen better thoughts and beliefs, then, like you said, he's simply left passively assuming, not that he could do otherwise, that his determined thoughts and beliefs are good, and let alone that his beliefs are true. But if that's the case, then no one could ever rationally affirm or argue that his beliefs really are the inference to the best explanation, because this could only be assumed. And again, this assumption would likewise be caused and determined and forced upon him by something other than him. It's not like he could assume otherwise. So really, this is a huge problem.
Yeah. So it's like we believe things, but we don't actually know anything. And we hold opinions, but we had no control over how we got the opinion. We have no control over what opinion we're holding. And what seems or feels intuitively, and I would argue it really is, like we're evaluating evidence and considering and using reason, is really just chemical, inevitable, unstoppable processes that are taking place due to external factors. And therefore, someone who says, an atheist who says, like, I read the Bible and I think that God is malicious, like this is the Richard Dawkins version, right?
Yeah.
You would say, well, but you didn't arrive to that conclusion on your worldview. You didn't arrive to that conclusion through rational thinking. The dominoes fell, and that's where they landed.
Yeah, physics and chemistry fizzed and popped and caused Richard Dawkins to be an atheist. And physics and chemistry, according to this view, fizzed and popped and caused you to be a biblical thinker. Not that you are, according to them, really thinking things through, but physics and chemistry caused...
Nobody is.
Right. Yeah. Physics and chemistry caused you to be a Christian. And physics and chemistry caused Richard Dawkins to be an atheist. So that's what it comes down to. Yeah. And I like how you said it there, Mike. You said... we've got these beliefs, but we really can't know anything. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, let me explain that. So this really comes down to justification for our beliefs. So the atheist, if naturalistic determinism is correct, as we've seen, we don't have justification for any of our beliefs on this view. Now, to make matters worse, if justification is required for knowledge, or at least some kinds of knowledge, then this knowledge becomes an illusion. This knowledge is illusory. Like you said, we don't know anything. So atheists are saying that free will is an illusion, and I'm saying, okay, great. Well, if that's the case, then rationality and knowledge gained via the use of reason or the process of rationality are also illusions. That knowledge gained through rationality is also an illusion.
So the belief that free will is an illusion itself, based on the conclusion that free will is an illusion, is a belief that was caused not by rational thinking, but by chemical reactions.
Right. Yeah. On that view, that's what they're left with. And so now you've got problems with justification. So let's talk about justification, at least briefly here. We're getting into some philosophical waters. And you've got many people who watch your show, Mike, who might know what justification means in the theological sense.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about justification in that sense. I'm talking about justification for one's beliefs that lead to knowledge. So epistemologists are professional philosophers who study knowledge and how we gain knowledge and what it means to have knowledge. And so these epistemologists often define knowledge in simplest terms as justified true belief. Now, some contend that maybe more might be required, but most, it seems, will say that you need these three ingredients: justified true belief, to have knowledge, or at least those three ingredients, maybe more, to possess what I refer to as reason-based knowledge. Yeah. So think about it like this. Socrates noted that a true belief is good, but it falls short of knowledge, right? A true belief is good, but it's not knowledge. It falls short of knowledge. Knowledge has greater value than mere true belief because it's rationally grounded, right? Imagine that it's tied down to the ground, whereas mere true belief is ungrounded. So according to Socrates, knowledge is true belief plus a rational account to ground the belief, or to tie it down. So let me quote him, to quote Socrates. He says, quote, "True opinions are a fine thing and do all sorts of good so long as they stay in their place, but they will not stay long. They run away from a man's mind, so they are not worth much until you tether them by working out the reason. Once they're tied down, they become knowledge and they're stable. That is why knowledge is something more valuable than right opinion. What distinguishes one from the other is the tether," end quote. So think of that tether as you're tying it down to the ground. Now, I like to refer to this process of rationality leading to reason-based knowledge as, I describe it like this: the steps one takes while deciding what one ought to believe and what one ought to affirm, right? That's what, when I talk about the process of rationality, that's a good way how I like to describe it. It's the steps that you're taking while you are deciding what you ought to believe. So think about that ought there, that you ought to believe and what you ought to affirm. Now, if exhaustive determinism is true and something other than you causally determines everything about you, then you are not in charge of these rational steps. They're being determined for you by something other than you, and that's a big problem when it comes to justification. So, let's put justification in terms that many might relate to. If you've ever had a math class, think about being back in high school, taking a math class, and the teacher gives the students a multiple choice quiz of one complex story problem. The teacher wants to see if his students know how to solve the story problem. So the first student was like me in high school and didn't understand the problem at all. But I did a lot of guessing in high school. And so even though the first student doesn't understand the problem, the story problem whatsoever, it's a multiple choice quiz. And so he guesses and he circles C, right? Well, guess what?
C was always my go-to.
That's right. It's got to be your go-to. and guess what? It worked. C happened to be correct. Now, he circles the correct answer on the paper, but does this student know the answer? Does he possess knowledge?
No.
Of course not. All right, so let's go to the next student. The next student doesn't understand the problem either, but he knows his neighbor to the right. She's pretty smart. So he cheats, right? We don't recommend that, but he's cheating. He's looking on his neighbor's paper. He sees that she circled C, so he's like, all right, I'm going to do the same thing. Circled C. Well, guess what? The answer is correct. But does he know the answer?
No.
No, he doesn't possess knowledge. Well, finally, let's talk about this last student. She understands the story problem just fine, but she goes further. She shows her work in the margins, right? She's cranking out all the numbers and showing how it works, showing her work leading to the correct answer. And she circles C. Does she possess knowledge?
Yeah.
Of course she does. The fact that she showed her work is the tether that demonstrates to her teacher and to herself that she possesses knowledge of reality. Now, one may happen to possess true beliefs, but if he doesn't possess a proper justification or a tether for a specific belief, and his true beliefs are simply based on luck, then his belief does not qualify as a knowledge claim, even if it happens to be true. So think about physics and chemistry, fizzing and popping. Talk about luck. Physics and chemistry might cause somebody to hold a true belief, but it's based on luck. Mm-hmm. It's not based on knowledge. If that's what causally determines everything, then we're all in a world of hurt. We don't possess knowledge. We might have some true beliefs, right? You might be able to cross the street without getting hit by a car, right? You might have some true beliefs, but we've got some big problems here, because if one cannot freely think and infer the best explanation among a range of alternative options that are each compatible with one's nature, then there can be no justification that their specific belief really is the best explanation.
Yeah. I wonder if we could take your analogy and apply it to this situation in an additional way and say that we're given a test and it's not multiple choice. All it is the only answer is C every time. And that would be probably more like what we have coming at us. It's like, well, the ink and the chemicals and the printing of the test might represent like our environment and our chemistry, and then we're always going to fill it out the same way, whether that's the right answer, wrong answer, or not.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you can always guess C no matter what, because that's your only option. That's but that's just that's the only thing that's compatible with one's nature. Now, here's the thing. Let's go back and assume that there's 4 options on that multiple choice quiz, and let's say C is the right answer, but the only answer compatible with your nature for some reason is B, right? So for some reason, if B is the only answer compatible with your nature, given everything about the universe, then, and you will affirm B as the correct answer, no matter what, then even though the correct answer was C, you have no ability to conclude that C is true, even though it is true. And so now all you're left with is assuming that B is true, and that assumption is not up to you either. So yeah, it quickly becomes, the problem gets bigger and bigger as we go here. So really, justification is huge. We see that we lose justification on this deterministic view.
So that's premise 3 there.
Yes. So, yeah. So did you want to add to that?
No, I mean, I think it follows. It's a new idea for most of us. It's just like, this is the premise where I go, okay, well, you need to explain that. I think you explain it well. You will have opinions. You will think you have knowledge, or at least we appear to, or at least we think we appear to, but we only think we appear to because everything we think is forced upon us. So we just ultimately, we can't really affirm that we're rationally working through anything, and
I'm not
therefore we lose justification.
Right. I'm not saying that you never have true beliefs. Right? A lot of people attack this argument and say, "Oh, you're saying that I can't have a true belief." No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that you cannot rationally infer and rationally affirm claims of knowledge, and I'm explaining why. And let me add this major point. Since these naturalistic events, the fizzing and popping of physics and chemistry, if you will, these naturalistic events are not intentionally aimed at truth. And these naturalistic events then would determine all of your thoughts and beliefs. If that's the case, then your thoughts and beliefs are not reliable. So that's what I'm arguing for here. It's reliability. Yeah. Your thoughts, if physics and chemistry isn't aimed at anything, it just fizzes and pops. That's
now, what about those who would say to you, but Tim, evolution has caused us to arrive at the state we're at now, and in evolution, it's survival and reproduction are the main things. And I think that rational thinking would aid survival and increase the likelihood that you'll produce offspring. And then what would your response to that be?
Yeah, well, this gets us back to Alvin Plantinga's evolutionary argument against naturalism. And I think that argument's pretty good, because what it does is it shows that our beliefs on evolutionary naturalism, that these beliefs are not aimed at truth, they're aimed at survival.
Right.
And so you've got to this kind of undercuts your ability to know things once you realize that your beliefs are aimed at truth. However, one could counter that and say, yeah, but given survival, it seems that we would survive better if we were having true beliefs. But my argument, the free-thinking argument against naturalism, although similar to Plantinga's, I feel like this is almost heretical to say or blasphemous, but I think it's slightly stronger than Plantinga's evolutionary argument against naturalism.
For those who don't know, Plantinga is like a massive philosophical heavyweight.
Yeah, I will never
massive. And so, Tim, you are now anathema.
I will. Let me say, he's one of my heroes. I will never pretend to be anywhere as close to as smart as him. I'm just saying. This argument seems to be a little bit stronger.
And the bottom line is that what the naturalist is affirming on one hand is evolution is aimed at reproduction, right? That's it's not even actually survival exactly. It's reproduction. That's the thing.
Surviving so you can reproduce.
Yeah, it's all just which is why something that dies while reproducing is an evolutionary win, right?
Yeah.
And so it's aimed at reproduction. And so to say I'm gonna stretch being aimed at reproduction to being aimed at forming thoughtful, rational, philosophical beliefs it's just not really warranted. That's a big jump. That's a very big jump that we're making there. And and at any rate, please. So, should we actually go on to number 4? We spent a lot of time at 3.
Yeah, I'll just quickly say that so Plantinga shows that those beliefs are not aimed at truth because they're aimed at survival, but when you back it up, when you look at the foundation here, and it's just, if it's physics and chemistry and maybe some quantum mechanics running the entire show, those aren't aimed at anything. So that's why I say it's even more of a problem. And so bottom line, one cannot determine what he ought to believe if something else determines what he will believe. And can I share a mad scientist thought experiment with you before we go on to the final?
Yeah, and I know that we talked about this before. I think this is a good aid for those who were kind of like, okay, well, help me put this all in a nutshell in a big picture illustration. I think this mad scientist illustration helps us do that where we're at now.
Mad scientists are so helpful, and there's many mad scientist thought experiments out there. This is one unique to me, one that I crafted to try to make my point. So I say, suppose a mad scientist somehow gets access to your brain. I don't know how he did it. When you were asleep, he implanted some microchips or something like that in your brain. And now, unbeknownst to you, he exhaustively controls and causally determines all of your thoughts and beliefs all the time. This includes exactly what you think of and about and exactly how you think of and about it. All of your thoughts about your beliefs and all of your beliefs about your thoughts are caused and determined by the mad scientist. And this also includes the very next words that are going to come out of your mouth. Question: how can you, not the mad scientist, rationally affirm the current beliefs in your head as good, bad, better, the best, true, or probably true? Now, note the range of options from which to choose. Right? How can you, not the mad scientist, rationally affirm any of the current beliefs in your head as good, bad, better, the best, true, probably true, without begging the question or reasoning in a circle, which is a logical fallacy? So good luck with that, because it's impossible. You can't do it, because whatever you say in response is not you. It's the mad scientist. So go ahead and object. Say anything in response. It's not you. It's the mad scientist. And I don't want to talk to the mad scientist. I want to talk to you. So where did you go? You see the problem?
Oh yeah, I see the problem. Yeah, I'm now, again, the point is I'm at the mercy of external things that I'm not making choices. I'm not rationally weighing things. I'm just experiencing thoughts.
Yeah.
Assuming that I even exist, that self isn't an illusion. Well, which someone would have to have the illusion. But I guess that's another rabbit trail. But yeah.
No. It's not a rabbit trail. I'm so glad you brought that up, because this leads some atheists to deny their own existence. I mean, think about that. I mean, I think Alex Rosenberg has done that in his book called The Atheist Guide to Reality. I mean, in order to deny the existence of God, they have to deny their own existence.
Yeah, Sam Harris, also
Crazy.
Daniel Dennett, right? Those guys. Self is an illusion.
Right.
But who's having, I mean, someone has to be having an illusion.
So much for I think, therefore I am, right? I mean,
yeah. If I'm having an illusion, then I must, anyway.
That's exactly right, Mike. That's great work there. But look, let's get back to the mad scientist here. You can replace the mad scientist with physics and chemistry. You can replace the mad scientist with God. You can replace the mad scientist with anything else. If you do that, you've got the exact same rationality problems, but for different reasons. So, I guess now we can shift gears and just say, since humanity does possess the ability to rationally infer and affirm knowledge claims, then we know, I mean, think about this on premise 4 now. We've got to possess the ability to rationally infer and affirm claims of knowledge. And we know this because to argue otherwise would be to affirm it. Right?
And this is where self-awareness comes in, right? Because as soon as I go, I don't have free will, you have to recognize, like, if you try to make an argument for that, you're functionally denying what you are trying to affirm, because you're actually saying, here's a case for a rational thinking reason to say and affirm that I do not have free will, yet this is all reliant upon us having some kind of libertarian decision making in the way we evaluate a case, make a case, and make a statement.
Yeah. I love how you said it. The way we evaluate a case. Well, the way I evaluate a case. Well, if something else does that for me, then I don't do it. And that's a major problem. And that's why these atheists are denying their own existence. Man, what a crazy view. I mean, to hold to your guns and deny the existence of God, you have to ultimately deny your own existence.
Yeah.
That just seems crazy.
Can I rant for just a second? This is one thing that gets me, and it drives me nuts, is when philosophy professors, and it's usually like low, it's like intro to philosophy courses, where on the first day of class, they try to convince the kids that they can't even affirm their own existence. And I'm like, if you're going to start philosophy by denying the most intrinsic common sense things, you're just going to be, you're just giving kids nightmares for no reason. Like as if they can't affirm their own existence.
Right.
How do you know you exist? How do you know you weren't made 5 minutes ago? And I'm just like, look, if I have to have a philosophical argument to affirm that I wasn't made 5 minutes ago, then I think we're doing philosophy wrong.
Right. Now that gets us into what Plantinga refers to as properly basic beliefs.
Yeah.
There's some things that we can't prove. You cannot prove that you're not in the matrix right now. But that doesn't mean, and you cannot prove that you weren't created 5 minutes ago with all these past memories, along with everybody else. But that doesn't mean that you can't say that you possess knowledge, that you don't know that the universe is billions of years old.
Yeah,
So,
I like the philosophers that kind of go, hey, I just have certain things that I know, right? And I'd rather try to understand, why do I know things, rather than trying to rebuild my very existence as if I can't take that for granted as, like, maybe you'd use the term properly basic belief, or I just like saying common sense. Like, it's just obvious, it's intuitive, I exist, hello, I'm here, I have a real history of experiences, and if I have to start by trying to validate all that, then I think I'm just doing things wrong. I should start by saying, okay, that's the case, how do I explain that?
I think Plantinga's right in talking about that there are some properly basic beliefs that we don't have to be able to show, that we just know. Then he goes on and says that why can't God be one of those properly basic beliefs? Or maybe even beliefs like Jesus loves me or whatever. I'm open to that, but I don't start by saying, well, that has to be one of the things. Maybe he's right, but I just say we've got properly basic beliefs, and then we can build on top of those. Those are like our foundation, and because of the properly basic beliefs that we have, we can start to connect some dots and gain more knowledge.
Okay, so wait, let me bring us back on track with number 4. So you're saying I've heard sort of two things in our discussion here. Maybe one was from you and one might have been from me, so reject it if you want. But one was, humans possess the ability to rationally infer and rationally affirm knowledge claims, partially because to even deny this requires that you do it. right?
Exactly.
So to even engage in a discussion about what's true and not true, you have to affirm this. And
Right.
then my thought was, why do I have to defend this? Right? Like, number 4, you should be affirming this. To like you said, to deny it is to rely on it. To deny it, which is circular. Yeah. But I think this is the kind of thing where we could spin our wheels for years, and it should just be common sense. Like the 7-year-old gets it, you should get it.
Well, imagine if I said, look, premise 4, humans do possess the ability to rationally infer and rationally affirm knowledge claims. And my debate partner said, no, we don't. I do not possess the ability to rationally infer and rationally affirm knowledge claims. I'll say, okay, see you later. This conversation's over, right?
That's the point of a debate. The whole premise of a debate is that you can do this.
Yeah. And if somebody's going to claim, I cannot rationally reach knowledge claims, then why should anybody listen to anything else that you say? Yeah. And you're saying, I have rationally inferred that I cannot rationally infer anything. So it's self-defeating.
All right. Number 5?
So 5 is a deductive conclusion.
All right. So now those were all, setting it all up. And now you're kind of getting some payoff.
Right. Yeah. So 5, we can just go through should I go through just really quick the whole thing?
Sure, if you'd like, I can put it all up on screen.
Yeah, put the whole thing back up. And I'm going to quickly, I say this is my elevator. If I'm on the elevator with somebody and somebody says, hey, defend your free thinking argument before we get to the top of the skyscraper, I'll say, okay, here we are. So I'll say premise 1. If naturalism is true, human nature does not include an immaterial soul. That simply means that if naturalism is true, then nature is all that exists. Mm-hmm. Premise 2. If human nature does not include an immaterial soul, then humans do not possess libertarian freedom. That means that if everything is nature and only nature, then everything about humanity would be caused and determined by the forces and events of nature. Premise 3. If humans do not possess libertarian freedom, then humans do not possess the ability to rationally infer and rationally affirm knowledge claims. Bottom line, if something outside of human control causally determines you to affirm a false belief, then it would be impossible for you to infer or affirm a better or true belief. Premise 4. Humans do possess the ability to rationally infer and rationally affirm knowledge claims. This premise is simply communicating the fact that you do have the ability to infer and affirm true beliefs. And to argue otherwise is self-defeating. It's like telling me I cannot utter one single sentence in the English language. Well, that's absurd. It's self-referentially defeating. And to affirm the opposite is to have it blow up in your face and destroy your entire case. So, since these 4 premises seem to be true, in fact, they seem to be undeniable, we can rationally declare the next 3 deductive conclusions as true. So step 5 says, therefore, humans possess libertarian freedom. 6, therefore, human nature includes an immaterial soul. And 7, therefore, naturalism is false. So that's the argument, Mike. If you'd like me to get into the final abductive conclusion, we can, but I know we've spent a lot of time. What do you think?
I would like to actually get into the final one. I think that's the payoff in a big way, and I know it's a long video. I don't care. And a lot of, it's split. Some of the audience is like, man, make a shorter video. And I'm just like, well, just watch the first 5 minutes and then turn it off. And then other people are like, longer, more content. All I want is more. And so we'll make the content. It'll reach whoever needs it. But this right here, naturalism is false. It's just, that is so far very strong, like you said, deductive, which is a very strong kind of argument. And it just follows naturally. Basically, we're saying, look, you have free will, and that means that you have like a soul or some immaterial quality to you.
Yeah.
And that's it. Then that means that naturalism is not true. Now, if naturalism itself is not true, how on earth do you explain that? Like, I have an immaterial soul. How do you explain that I have a soul? And your argument here in number 8 is, well, the best explanation is a biblical view of God. And that, to me, is where you're going to get actually probably a lot of pushback from especially the skeptics. So break it down in a way that, say, like if you would, a non-believer would be able to follow your logic here, why you're not just saying the Bible tells me so.
Right.
And, you know, I mean, although I think, I mean, I believe the Bible's inspired, so the Bible tells me so is enough for me.
Right.
But
right.
but I recognize that I want to meet someone where they're at, and this is an argument that doesn't rely on that. This is an argument that just travels through free will to an immaterial soul or something like that, to God, a biblical view of God being the best explanation of that. So yeah, take us through 8 if you would.
All right. I first to say that I've had some debates with atheist philosophers and philosophy students in the past, and they've wound up agreeing with steps 1 through 7. They just rejected the final abductive conclusion. These atheists, they left naturalism and realized, okay, yeah, there's got to be some immaterial aspect of humanity that makes sense of this libertarian freedom that we have.
Yeah.
That's at least, they would say, at least the best explanation. But they weren't willing to go here. But I think that we can say that the best explanation of human libertarian freedom and the soul is a biblical view of God. I used to just say it's God, but then as I studied scripture, I'm like, no, it's the biblical view of God. This makes better sense than other forms of theism.
Yeah.
So why should we think that step 8 is true? I'm not going to start with scripture. I want to end there. So why is the biblical view of God the inference to the best explanation?
Wait, just pause. So when you say I'm not going to start with scripture, I'm going to end there. I think for the audience, I just want you guys to catch this in case you don't see what he's saying. He's saying that he's going to argue philosophically that this gives us a type of understanding of who God is. It gives us some elements, some things to know about God, and those things match the biblical God, right? So we're getting to those conclusions through this philosophical argument, and then we're just matching philosophy up to scripture and saying it fits.
Yeah, well said. Yeah. So I want to show why the biblical view of God is the inference to the best explanation of the data. And right now we've seen that, we've got good philosophical reasons to think that there's some immaterial aspect to humanity and that we've got libertarian freedom. So I'm going to say, what's the best explanation of this? So recall that the entire previous discussion has been argued without appealing to the Bible or any other religious book. It's been based on logic alone. I don't think I've referenced a single Bible verse to this point. Have I?
I don't believe so.
I don't think so. So I typically, when I go and speak on university campuses, I make it clear. I said, does anybody see a Bible up here? And I'll say, look, I've got my backpack over there, and I do have a Bible in there, but I've left it in there because I want to make a case for the Bible without using the Bible, or
external. We might call this external, experiential, and philosophical confirmation that the biblical teaching on God is true.
Exactly. I say that pastors should start with scripture, but as a philosophically inclined systematic theologian, I don't start with scripture. I end there. So that's what I'm going to do here. I want to end with scripture and show, look at everything we've concluded through logic. And then let's see what the Bible says. And we're like, oh, wow, we're talking about the same thing here. So having then argued and deductively concluded that the immaterial human soul exists, the next question raised is this. Like I said, what's the best explanation? Because really, I mean, if you think about it, naturalistic evolution seems to be an unlikely candidate to account for the existence of a supernatural soul, right? Or an immaterial anything. So a better explanation is required. Specifically, what is the best explanation for the other than nature aspect of humanity, typically referred to as the soul? So to answer this question, let's recall one of my favorite arguments in the cumulative case. Are your listeners familiar with the Kalam cosmological argument?
Yeah, I think so. I've got video on it. I actually talked about it last Friday as well.
Good.
So yeah, from the argument that the universe has a beginning and that God is the best explanation for that.
Yeah, exactly. So you might want to share that with this video because the Kalam, in my opinion, it's definitely one of the most intriguing arguments for the existence of God. And it's a short, simple, two-premise argument with a powerful deductive conclusion. And you said that God is the best explanation, but it does have a deductive conclusion that it says nothing about God, but everybody sees that it's God, and that's why atheists hate this argument. So it goes like this. Premise 1, whatever begins to exist has a cause. 2, the universe began to exist. 3, therefore the universe has a cause. Now, my focus today is not to defend the premises of this well-known argument, but if people want to go watch your video on it, or they can go to freethinkingministries.com, my website. I've written a lot about the Kalam, or they can go to my YouTube channel, just Free Thinking Ministries YouTube channel. I've got some videos there. Really, the best place to go is William Lane Craig's work, his website, his books. He's the king when it comes to the Kalam. But my focus today is simply focusing on that final step of the deductive conclusion. And if the two premises are true, it leads to a startling conclusion that the universe has a cause. So now you have to unpack what does universe mean? So consider this definition of the universe. The universe is anything and everything that is in time and space, including time and space, everything that is physical, material, and can be tested or discovered scientifically. So that's a nice way of saying all nature, right? The naturalist believes that that's all that exists, right? That the universe is all that exists, only nature. But given this description, the cause of the universe cannot be anything that fits within the definition of the universe. And to argue otherwise, one is left affirming logical incoherence, like the universe existed before the universe existed.
Yeah, or the universe was causing things while it wasn't existing.
Well, that's right. So the question is, well, what could have caused the universe to exist logically prior to the existence of the universe, or of all nature? So think about the rational inferences, and this will get a bit philosophical here, but it's going to relate to the abductive conclusion of the free thinking argument quite soon. So bear with me. So here's the deal. If the cause of the universe transcends space and time, then logically it had to be timeless. Because we're talking about the beginning of time. So whatever caused time, whatever caused the clock to start ticking, had to exist previously in a state of affairs in which the clock was not ticking. So this means that whatever was the cause of time would have had no beginning, because a beginning necessitates time. So if the cause existed apart from time and had no beginning, well, it can be inferred logically that this cause has, or had no cause of its own, as it logically never began to exist. It exists outside of time and exists eternally without beginning. So it's an eternal without beginning cause of space-time universe. I saw somebody on their Twitter feed yesterday. What is it? They said time after time, or what is it? That different religions are, or that time disproves different religions. And
I've got it right here.
Yeah.
See if I can put it on our screen. You sent me some of the ones that you thought were interesting.
Yeah.
Time kills all gods.
Okay. Now I saw that, and
Boom.
I thought,
#atheism.
I think time kills most ideas of gods, or God or gods, right? But I have an article on my website, freethinkingministries.com, called "Time Proves God," and this version of God that time proves is quite consistent with the biblical view of God as well. But I don't want to get into that right now, but it's kind of related because we're talking about the space-time universe. So with that said, the Big Bang marks the beginning of space-time. If that's the case, then it logically follows that the cause of the universe also had to have been spaceless. And this means that the cause would have no size or shape. Whatever it was, whatever caused the universe, whatever caused all nature, was utterly immaterial. So accordingly, just like the free thinking argument, the Kalam takes naturalism off the table as a possible model of reality, because this argument has provided evidence that a supernatural, an other than nature cause of the universe exists. Now, beyond this ultimate cause being outside of time and being immaterial, another inference is that it must be enormously powerful. Dr. Craig, I think, has said, I can't think of anything that would require more power than causing an entire universe from nothing. So what could require...
Or even a paperclip from nothing, if you ask me. Just anything from nothing. That's pretty... I like the way William, he goes, timeless, spaceless.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, he always kind of says it the same way.
So, whatever it is, it's got to be enormously powerful to create a paperclip or a universe, an entire universe from nothing. So on top of that, not only did the cause of the universe have to have been apart from time and space, it also had to have the ability, speaking of power, it had to have the power to spontaneously bring the world into existence without anything causing it to do so, because then whatever the cause of the cause was would be the cause. I think I said that right. Now remember, now we're talking about causation again. So remember, one of the definitions of libertarian freedom that we started with, it's not being causally determined by an external force. So we see here that whatever the cause of the universe, the space-time universe was, it has libertarian freedom because it wasn't causally determined by something else.
Yeah, we have no reason to invent the existence of something other than the cause of the universe to be alongside. I mean, that would itself just be, it would either, the thing we invent would either be another version of the same thing. We'd just be making God again, or it would be something God would have to cause, right? So the cause of the universe, using Occam's razor,
that's right,
correctly, which nobody on the internet does, and we would shave away unnecessary extrapolations. We're going to bring in other causes. So in other words, it's something internal is causing. He's causing himself to create the universe effectively, right?
I wouldn't say he's causing himself. He's just he's whatever the cause.
That's probably
is.
A sloppy terminology, huh? He's causing himself.
right.
He is the cause, anyway.
Yeah, there you go.
So that's libertarian free will because there's nothing external causing him.
Now, if you see, I'm not jumping to the conclusion that this is God at this point. I'm just referring to it as the cause of the universe, saying whatever the cause is, it's a supernatural cause, it's a timeless and eternal cause. The cause of space has to be spaceless and therefore immaterial because matter requires space to exist. Another word for immaterial might be spirit, but call it what you will, right? And whatever this cause of the universe is, it's got to be enormously powerful because the ability to bring anything into existence, let alone a fine-tuned universe, seems to require tremendous amounts of power, and I can't think of anything that would require more power. Now, we've also shown that this cause of the universe, whatever it is, has libertarian free will. Since this cause, whatever it is, exists outside of anything physical, temporal, or material, none of these things could logically cause or force this ultimate cause to do anything. So therefore, this ultimate cause seems to have its own volition or libertarian freedom or libertarian free will. So now see this cause of the universe possesses libertarian freedom, at least in the sourcehood sense. I in my dissertation and in my book that's coming out soon, I argue that the cause of the universe, whatever it is, also has the PAP, the principle of alternative possibilities.
Also known as the chocolate or vanilla version of free will.
That's right. But at this point, all I need is the sourcehood sense, and I've demonstrated sourcehood here. So then the question is raised: what could this immaterial cause of the universe that possesses libertarian freedom be? Well, think about it. Persons. If you think that persons have free will or not, persons are the only types of things that could possibly possess libertarian freedom to make choices. I'm not saying just humans. I'm saying personal things. If you're a free-thinking thing, then you seem to be a personal thing. You're a person, right? So even if Wookiees existed,
Yeah.
they would still be personal beings, even though they're not humans.
Yeah.
So persons are the only types of things that could possibly possess libertarian freedom to make choices. So therefore, we can decipher that the cause of the universe was a personal being.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of my favorite physicists, theoretical physicists, her name is, I hope I pronounce it right, Foitini Markopoulou, Greek physicist. She made a statement once. She said, apart from time, things don't happen. So think about that. Apart from time, things don't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with one caveat. I would say apart from time, things don't happen unless in a timeless state, a timeless agent with libertarian freedom chooses to make something happen. Then something can happen. So to clarify, since it's true that apart from time, things don't happen unless a timeless agent with libertarian freedom chooses to make something happen or the first thing happen, then we have additional reason to infer that the cause of the universe is a personal being, since agents with libertarian freedom are persons. They don't have to be human, just a person, the personal entity. Now, here's the deal. And this is where the Kalam gets pretty cool. If the cause of the universe is personal, then it's at least possible that it, whatever it is, can have a personal relationship with other personal beings. And Mike, you and I are personal beings, and I think there's, hundreds, if not thousands of people watching this video or that will watch it who are also personal beings. And so therefore, it's possible that all the personal or all the persons who are watching this video can have a personal relationship with the cause and creator of the universe. Now, how cool is that? Because I haven't touched a Bible or any other religious book. I've just been thinking logically about scientific data, really.
Yeah.
I've just been doing metaphysics here.
So this would present us with a challenge to deism, right? Where some would say, well, that's just deism. It'd be like, this would actually, this piece of the argument is saying, that's not deism, right? That the personal nature is pushing against that.
Yeah. So all I'm saying right now is that it's at least possible that human persons could have a personal relationship with the cause and creator of the universe. Now, deism could be true at this point. So even if there was a personal cause and creator of the universe, but then this personal creator left and said, you guys are on your own.
I don't like you.
Yeah, right. That'd be a form of deism, I guess.
Sure.
But it'd still be possible for this deistic God to come back and have a personal relationship with us. Why? Because you and I are persons, and there was a personal.
Because in my head, deism involves limits, right? It's an arbitrary limit that God will not interact and know you and access you, that kind of thing. That's deism is not just saying it hasn't happened, but like deism, at least to me, the stronger understanding of it is like, there's a limit here. There's a God, but there's an impassable boundary between us. For some reason or another. But anyway,
you got the gears going on my head right now. And I think really the limit, if deism is true, I think you could still have an omnipotent deistic creator. You could still have an omniscient deistic creator, but he wouldn't be omnibenevolent if he doesn't desire a love relationship with persons.
Yeah. Nor would he be just and holy in the sense, the biblical sense, because he's not actually the rightful judge of the universe. He just like, go ahead, do your thing.
Right. Anyway, you got my gears turning in my head with some of those comments. So good job.
Totally messed you up.
Right. No. Here's my point. We've come to the conclusion, just through metaphysical arguments at this point, that human persons could at least possibly have a personal relationship with the cause and creator of the universe. Now, I call the cause of the universe God, but one is free to call this cause whatever they'd like. However, and Dr. Craig says this every once in a while. He says, as Shakespeare said, that which we call a rose by any other name would smell just as sweet. So now I'm trying to say that the inference to the best explanation for the human soul and libertarian freedom is the biblical view of God. So far, I've just got God. Right? Because like you said, this could be a deistic version of God. Maybe it's Islam. Maybe it's Judaism. But I'm saying, no. It's the biblical view of God. So we've got God, but let's make it stronger. why is the biblical view of God the best explanation of human freedom and the human soul? Because the Kalam simply appeals to logic and science and doesn't touch a religious book whatsoever. But be that as it may, the attributes that we've drawn from that conclusion correspond with the way the Bible describes God's properties. So the Kalam provides evidence of the ultimate mega mind behind the universe, which also makes perfect sense regarding the free-thinking immaterial mini-minds that humans seem to have based on the free-thinking argument. So I want you to see that the free-thinking argument shows free-thinking immaterial mini-minds. The Kalam shows an immaterial free-thinking mega-mind behind the universe. So you start to see, wow, are we in the image or likeness of the ultimate mega mind behind the universe?
Yeah.
See where I'm going? Okay.
Yeah, that's a really intriguing idea. Now, let me before you continue that thought. So number 8, you're kind of, it sounds like you're saying so far, I know you're still working through it. Your justification for number 8 is going to be a central part of it's going to be the Kalam. Is that right?
Yeah.
So part of unpacking and defending is going to be the Kalam, or would you also?
I don't have to have the Kalam.
Mm-hmm. Could you summarize so far the justifications you've already presented for 8, just in case I'm getting lost in the weeds?
Say that again.
Would you be able to summarize the justifications you've given so far, the defense you've given so far for number 8?
Yeah, that like I said, that which we call a rose by any other name smells just as sweet, right? This is God. So we've shown that there's an immaterial, supernatural, other than nature, a cause of the universe with libertarian free will. So libertarian free will is baked into ultimate reality before the universe ever exists, let alone some things within the universe. So we've got look. I mean, the free thinking argument shows an immaterial a libertarian or an immaterial libertarian free thinking thing exists. The Kalam shows an immaterial libertarian free cause and creator of the universe exists. So my point is really to say that the human soul fits quite nicely in this theistic worldview. Mm-hmm. Now, I've not simply argued for God, though, in conclusion 8, abductive conclusion 8. I've suggested that the biblical view of God is the inference to the best explanation of the existence of the immaterial human soul. And that's because the biblical view of both God and soul are clear. So I think, I guess we should finally appeal to Scripture now. Or did I answer your question? Or
I think it sounds to me like, unless I'm missing something, that the Kalam is... So, okay, so far in the argument, what we get is an immaterial soul and free-thinking people. It's kind of what we're getting in the beginning part, the first 7. And then 8 is saying, so far I hear the Kalam offers a defense that there is an ultimate cause of the universe that also has free will.
The same kind of thing.
And so you're suggesting that we're deriving our free will not from the universe. There doesn't seem to be a natural cause, a cause within the universe for my free will. So you're deriving it from this ultimate being who has free will. So you're making a creation-created relationship between the two.
Yeah, free will, libertarian freedom, as all these naturalists are saying, doesn't seem to have room in a purely naturalistic universe. If nature is ultimate reality and all reality, then where would libertarian freedom come from? But if God exists and created the universe, then libertarian freedom exists before the universe. So it seems that the creator who possesses libertarian freedom could surely create creatures with libertarian freedom, at least if he's as powerful.
Now, would you also run the argument a little differently? Like if you were to do it, I love the Kalam. I think it's a fantastic.
Right.
I'm convinced by it. I've used it in line at Disneyland with somebody, and I thought it was great. And he did too.
Next time you go to Disneyland, share the free thinking argument and let me know.
But let's say that I didn't use the Kalam, didn't associate this other argument, just for the simplicity of it. Would you say this works? And please shoot me down. I mean, this is I'm expressing the kind of thoughts that come to my mind that might come to others' minds, and so you feel free to shoot me down. I won't be embarrassed. The idea would be we know we have free will, and some kind of soul, and we can't source this in the natural, and so there's a supernatural cause for my free will, and that right there seems to be, I say supernatural, or a non-naturalistic cause for my free will, and to suggest an impersonal cause and something that doesn't itself have free will starts to get problematic for some of the same reasons.
Yeah, I like how you said that.
All right, cool.
Share that at Disneyland too. So
right on. Okay, so you wanted to get biblical.
Yeah, let's finally get biblical. Like I said, I don't start with scripture, but as a philosophically inclined, systematic theologian, I don't start with the Bible. I like to end with the Bible. When I go speak at different churches, I often say that. So I said, look, your pastor starts with the Bible. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to end with the Bible. And that means you should respect him all the more when he starts with the Bible next week. So let's finally appeal to scripture. I'm going to I'll keep it simple. I'm just going to appeal to one passage in the Old Testament and another in the New. So Genesis 1:26 and 27, God says, let us make man in our image. Okay, and other translations would say in our likeness. So given the Kalam, the Kalam helps us think through this. We start to see what it means to be in the likeness of this immaterial, supernatural, libertarian, free cause and creator, right? Doesn't mean a perfect, like it's not like a mirror kind of image, but it's just a likeness. We are like this cause and creator. And really, if you think about it, I mean, we're kind of little miracle workers. We do supernatural things every day just by the mere process of thinking and being rational. But anyway, not to mention moving physical things. I can move my arm just by thinking about it.
Yeah, I think we're way more amazing than we ever think. It's just
right. Yeah,
blows my mind. Here we are. Anyway. We're two like actual beings in a conversation, being viewed by a bunch of other beings that have like a consciousness and awareness and
can think rationally about it.
Yeah. And this is where the theistic worldview, I think, makes more sense, because you look around and you go, look at you guys, you're made in the image of God, you're amazing. You're sinners, that you need the grace of Christ, but your very nature is there's this just amazing wow factor. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Whereas then the atheist worldview has to look and then try to like tone down all that stuff. Like, you're not really, you're just a meat robot. You don't really have consciousness, because that's a consequence of my worldview.
Yeah.
And, we want to rescue guys from that worldview.
Right. You are so much more than a meat robot.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we'll just start with Genesis 1:26 and 27. Let us make man in our image.
In our image.
So let's go to the New Testament now. 2 Corinthians 5:8. In that passage, Paul communicates the following. The Apostle Paul communicates that to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. So think about that. To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. Now, so with the Kalam in mind, not to mention Bible verses like God is spirit. I think that's John 4:24. God is spirit. So we know that God is not composed of anything physical. So it follows that God is not the same kind of thing that photons would bounce off of to then penetrate the optic nerve. No. It'd be photons would bounce off to then penetrate the retina to stimulate our optic nerves to then produce an image in our brains. I think I got that right.
Yeah, God doesn't fit in a test tube. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Photons aren't bouncing off of God, or however the technical term would be. So whatever kind of image that when you look in a mirror and you see an image, that's not the image that the cause of the universe has. The cause of the universe isn't a physical, material thing. That's why racism is stupid, by the way. Racism is just stupid. And that's also why every human is equal, right? The Declaration of Independence got it right, that every human is equal in the image of our Creator, because the same soul. Look, LeBron James.
I think you meant to say made in the image of the thing.
That's right. Oh,
yeah,
Joe
no, yeah. Our differences, even in gender, are differences which are significant differences, but they're trivial compared to our core nature being made in the image of God.
Image
And then
of
our
God.
differences in skin color
Right.
are irrelevant.
And differences in size and shape.
Yeah.
You know, LeBron James has much more physical power than I do. We're not created equal when it comes to our physical bodies.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? The same thing that's going to survive the death of his body is exactly equal to the same thing that is going to that survives the death of my body.
Yeah.
Right? There's no size or weight or color to that image of God. And when you start to understand this and you see, wow, this is what makes us equal. This is why the government ought to treat us equally.
Mm-hmm.
I promise I wasn't going to get into politics today, but
just so you guys know, Tim's actually on a kick right now where he's dealing with a lot of this kind of content, where he's dealing with social justice issues and Marxism and things like this. And if you guys are interested in considering the things that he has to share, that you'll find that on his website. I linked it below actually in the video description too. So,
Cool.
so yeah, I'm not embarrassed about those issues. In fact, I'm thinking I might need to dig into them more.
I hope you do.
The truth is, I try to make my content be it'll be valid, it'll be relevant years from now. It'll be relevant outside the United States and whatever country people are viewing. I have viewers in South Africa, I have viewers in Norway. I'm not worried about U.S. politics when I make content. But there are things that are just growing in importance in my mind, and I'm thinking maybe I need to focus on those issues more. We'll see. The truth is, it's like forcing me to care about things I know this sounds weird. I don't care.
Right.
I just don't care.
Well, I would say,
and it's easy for me. I'm like, look, that's obviously dumb. Like, that's unbiblical and dumb, and Christians shouldn't do it. Like, how hard is this?
right.
And this isn't about picking a side between Republicans and Democrats. And if we think it is, we're not thinking biblically. Anyway, maybe we'll touch more on those issues later.
I'm a proud, free-thinking, registered independent. So I've definitely picked on Republicans in the past, but yeah, I do seem to be picking on some Democratic policies a lot more lately. But let's table that. We can discuss that at some other
because
time.
you can disagree with us on those secondary political issues, and I can disagree with you and me. We're talking about the central issues about the Christian faith, and there will be believers who are genuine followers of Christ who will disagree on those issues, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. So let's get back to this image and this likeness. You know, I think a better interpretation of that passage is, let us make man in our likeness. But I'm cool with image too, because image just means likeness. But God is an immaterial and supernatural mind, right? We see this from the Kalam, and so is the human soul. We see that from the free thinking argument. So you see how the Kalam and the free thinking argument overlap here. Mm-hmm. And moreover, when we talk about the Apostle Paul's words in 2 Corinthians, Paul tells us that we can exist apart from the body. And based on the logical law of identity, if a person can exist apart from his body, then he is not identical with his body. So Paul is referring to you, an immaterial human mind who has a body, but can continue to exist apart from it. And this immaterial mind is the human soul created in the image of God. So, given the fact that we've argued both, one, that immaterial minds exist within the universe, these immaterial many minds exist within the universe, and that two, we've evidenced that a mega mind, an immaterial mega mind, is behind the universe, and we've done all of that without touching a Bible. I say perhaps we should take the Bible seriously when it affirms the exact same things. And you see, this is why a biblical view of God is the best explanation of the immaterial and free-thinking human soul. That's the abductive conclusion there. So, in conclusion of everything I've got for you today, I just say that we have reason to believe that God created humanity with libertarian freedom. So, I also believe then that God has created humanity to live in freedom, to live in a libertarian free state, I guess. That's his desire for us anyway. So look at Galatians 5:13. I'll end with scripture here. Galatians 5:13, Paul says, "For you have been called to live in freedom, my brothers and sisters. But don't use your freedom to satisfy your sinful nature. Instead, use your freedom to serve one another in love. You see, we could satisfy our sinful nature, but he's saying, no, don't do what you could do. Instead, do otherwise. You have the ability to do otherwise. Use your freedom to serve one another in love. You see, God has called us to live in libertarian freedom. And I argue so that we can experience true love. So we have alternative options that are both consistent and compatible with our nature. Christians can either satisfy our sinful natures, or we can choose to serve each other in love. So choose wisely.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I love how it comes back to love.
Yeah.
In a non fluffy sense. It's just like you go, yes. I mean, Christianity is about love ultimately.
That's exactly
so
right.
many ways. So
that's why we exist.
Yeah. Yeah. Relationships. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the worst things that can happen to you is just being completely and utterly isolated, which is one of the reasons why all this stuff with people, social distancing is so challenging and hard for many people, because they're just being very, very isolated. And it's so not right for us. That I'm not arguing about anything other than the effect it has. The effect it has is not healthy for us here. So that's what I think of as, like, in prison, when it goes really bad, they're like, all right, you're already in prison. Now we're going to make you be alone in prison. Right?
Right.
That's like solitary confinement. It's like the worst, because we're made for relationships and we're made for love. And here Christianity is all about God, who wants to have a relationship with you where you love him and you choose him as he chooses you, freely joined together, covered by the forgiveness of Christ. I mean, it's beautiful.
Yes.
And it fits in so many ways. Like, I don't know how else to explain this, except so philosophically it's defensible, and it fits my gut for what humans need, right? Forgiveness and relationship and love. And I see that in Christianity as opposed to other religions. They're not all the same. The Grim Reaper can't just stomp around from room to room using the same scythe, because the very scythe that takes out Roman gods and Greek gods doesn't work on the God of the Bible.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
It's a maximally great being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, Tim, thank you so much. If people want to follow up on your stuff, it's free thinking. Wait, I don't want to get your website wrong. What is it?
freethinkingministries.com.
Ministries.com. Freethinkingministries.com. I have links in the video description as well. When his book comes out on this topic, I will come back and add a link to that as well. And is there anything else that we should say? Oh, your YouTube channel is also, you're recently experimenting with doing more YouTube content. So people can follow you on there.
Not nearly as good as yours, Mike, but I'm trying. So yeah, anybody watching this, if you would subscribe to the Free Thinking Ministries YouTube channel, you'd make me very happy.
Yeah. And if you liked the way he unpacked the things today, then you'll probably like a lot of his content, because he's the same guy dealing with different issues. So I guess that's going to be it. Thanks for joining, you guys. Wednesday, I have an interview that I'm going to be posting. I did on a radio show, or a podcast, I guess. And that'll be coming up, and that's on Wednesday. Then on Friday, we're doing our weekly Q&A. Next Monday, we'll be back with the Mark series, picking up on the issue of prayer. I'm fiddling around with how I'm going to handle this next issue. I may deal with it as, is Kenneth Copeland right? As a sort of topical, because I'm dealing with probably the most powerful, strongest prayer passage from the words of Jesus about whatever you ask, believing you will receive. And so I thought, well, I want to do this rightly. I want us to understand it carefully, and we'll see how that goes. Pray for me this week that I would have wisdom. And all right, thanks, Dr. Tim Stratton. And there was somebody in the comments in the live chat who I got a note from one of my mods who was saying that you're not really a doctor. And I just want to say, like, welcome to the internet.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So tell us what was your PhD in? What where'd you get it?
Yeah, from a secular university in South Africa. So it's Northwest University. And yeah, I had to write a 300+ page dissertation to get it. And yeah, it's a real PhD. So
yeah, which doesn't mean that everything you say is right. But what it means is that you've put your homework in on this topic, and this is the issue. This is related to your dissertation, the stuff we're talking about today. So, so at any rate, people are always going to
Right.
Not going to go look up your institution and be like, oh, that one doesn't count.
Not in America.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. That's just welcome to the internet. You should see the things they say about me.
Hey, bottom line, it doesn't matter if I have a PhD or not.
No. What matters is your argumentation.
Right. I don't care if somebody is a janitor at a gas station. Nothing wrong with being a janitor at a gas station. But if their arguments are valid and sound, then they're valid and sound, and you got to take them seriously.
And if they did study philosophy, they would understand what an ad hominem is, and they wouldn't attack your degree or your education. They would focus on your argumentation.
That's right. That's right.
Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me. God bless you. I hope that this has been something fruitful. I hope that in the next few years we see this kind of argument continue to be more popularized, so that people can kind of take it to the street and talk to their friends about it, and show how free will not only shows that you're more than meat, it also points to the biblical God. All right. God bless you.